Hello everyone, welcome back to the second video about the Dynamic Fantasy Football Draft Board. In the first video we discussed what you need to do pre-draft, and that involved the settings tab and each of the position tabs, filling in player projections as well as your league settings and just your preferences for the draft board itself. So if you haven't watched that video yet, you can go to the directions page and click this link right here and watch that video. Also, if you're not familiar with value-based drafting, you might want to click this link and read the article that explains how value-based drafting works. If you've already seen those, then let's go ahead and talk about how to actually use the draft board during the draft. So we've already completed all the prep work. It's draft night, and it's time to use the draft board. Now, one thing I will suggest is doing some mock drafts ahead of time just to practice and make sure you feel comfortable with the draft board. But we're assuming it's draft night and it's time to draft. So first thing to be aware of is just how it's laid out. You've got your player ranks over here, the positions, and then the player names, the value of the players, which is again calculated using value-based drafting, which you can again learn about from the worksheet on the first link. Here is an important column, the picks that we are from the average draft position for each player. So over here in this far right column, you can see the average draft position, which is something that we have to input ourselves before the draft. So you'll need to look up the average draft position of all the players on your on the draft board before the draft and type those in right here. And then this column will tell you how many picks throughout the draft you are from that person's average draft position. So currently, right now, obviously Todd Gurley, his average draft position is first. So since no one has made a pick as of right now, we are currently one pick from his average draft position. Now, assuming someone makes a pick, you'll notice that Le'Veon Bell's average draft position is 2. So whenever a pick is made, now we're only one pick away from his average draft position. And each number over here should go down by 1 with each pick that you put in to the draft board. All right, now you also notice that these rankings over here are not in order. In order to get those in order, you just need to click the Sort Values button, and it will sort all of the players and put them in the proper order. Alright, so in this column we have the drop-off. This column will pop up with values whenever it's your turn to draft. You really don't need it until it's your turn to draft anyways. So what this number will tell you is if I do not take Todd Gurley with this pick, how much of a value drop can I expect to my next pick if I take a running back. So from Todd Gurley to the running back I can expect to get, if I don't take Todd Gurley now, how much of a value drop off is there going to be? Alright, so that's a valuable piece of information to have during the draft, and I'll explain why here in a little bit. Over here is the column where you're going to put who drafted Todd Gurley. So you'll just select the player or yourself if you're the one that drafts him. And then of course there's the average draft position. Up here at the top, you can see this is going to list one of two things, either the players that are most likely drafted next, which is going to put the player at each position that is closest to their average draft position. Okay, so it'll put those players up here if you have that selected. If you have player with the highest value selected, then it's going to put the player that has the highest value number up here. Okay. So let's pretend that we're starting a draft, and as of right now we have the third pick. So once 2 picks are made, it'll be our turn, and we'll expect to see some changes here on the draft board. So let's say that Stevens has the first pick and takes Todd Gurley, and then with the second pick, Team 2 takes Le'Veon Bell. So you notice now the drop-off numbers are populated, and also these cells up here got some color to them now. So those colors are going to help us with our pick. So now that it's our pick, the first thing you want to look at is the value. So when I look up here at these players, I'm looking for the player that has the highest value. Also, you can see that the rankings have changed a little bit because 2 running backs were taken. The other running back values have gone up a little bit. So because of that, Alvin Kamara is now a higher value than Aaron Rodgers, simply because running backs have been coming off the board and there's more of a value put on each running back. So you could sort the values, resort them if you want. But up here you can see the player that has the highest value is still Ezekiel Elliott. And so we're thinking that's going to be who we will pick. the next thing you want to check before you pick that player is how many picks are you from their ADP. So looking over here in this column, notice that it's green. Green tells you that you're close enough to this player's ADP to go ahead and take them and feel confident that it's the right selection. Okay, so when you see green in the ADP, that means go ahead and take that player that has the highest value. So that means I'm going to go ahead and take Ezekiel Elliott, and when I do, of course, those colors are going to disappear, and then it's going to be someone else's pick, and I'm going to have to fill in all the other picks. So let's just fast forward a little bit. All right, so at this point, we have gotten through the first round and are coming back towards the end of the second round. And so it's now our pick again, as you can see with the colors. You can also see the positions are a little bit mixed around here. We don't have everybody drafted in the same order that we had them in our draft board, which is to be expected. And the numbers are a little out of order, so you can always quick sort values when it's your turn, and it'll sort all the positions and make sure all the ones that have already been picked are thrown to the top, and everyone that's available is now ranked down here. So looking at this, you can see the players that have the highest value. After you sort them, it'll sort them by the value. So if you have it down here, the players with the highest value, then over here you could change this to players most likely drafted next and see both of those things at the same time. Now in this situation, the players that have the highest value are the players that are most likely drafted next at each position, but that's not always going to be the case. So right now they're the same. Not always going to be that way, but right now they are. Alright, so looking at this now, going by what we said on our first pick, we're going to pick the player with the highest value. So when I look at the highest value player, I see Derrick Henry is the highest with 85. Alright, whether you agree with that or not, that's just what the draft board has on it right now. So according to just this column, I should draft Derrick Henry. But let's look at the picks from ADP column. Notice that the picks from ADP is a yellow box this time. Okay, the reason why is because the picks that I am from the average draft position is very similar to the number of picks that I am from my next pick. Okay, so to kind of explain that a little bit further, remember I'm the third pick in the draft. So coming back in the second round, I'm going to be one of the last picks in the second round. The only two people picking after me are going to be whoever had the first overall pick and the second overall pick. So those two people will pick after I make this pick currently. And then those two people will also get another pick to start the third round. And then I'll get to pick again because it's a snake draft. So there's only 4 picks between the pick I'm about to make and my next pick. Because of that, there's a chance Derrick Henry is still there. There's a chance that he's not. Now, let's see Matt Stafford. He's 0 picks from his average draft position, which means he should have already been drafted. So the chances that he is taken within those next 4 picks is a little bit higher than if Derrick Henry is taken in those next 4 picks. Gronkowski and the Jags most likely are not going to be taken before my next pick, which is why their boxes are red. So that's how this can kind of give you an idea of who might still be available with your next pick. If you see it's green, probably not going to be available with your next pick. If it's yellow, they might be. If it's red, then they're probably going to be available. Now, you can use this as a guide, not a hard, fast rule. If you know someone in your league really loves Rob Gronkowski, and you really want Gronkowski, even though, or maybe say he does have the highest value right now. Maybe his value was 90. Okay, so he has the highest. And even though his ADP is a red box, meaning you should probably wait on him to get him with your next pick. If you know one of the guys getting ready to pick after you loves Gronkowski or loves the Patriots for some reason, then you might want to go ahead and get him. Okay, so make sure you use your knowledge of the people in your league to help you out during the draft also. But if you, all things being equal right now, I'm looking at Derrick Henry, and I'm thinking I should take him because of this highest value. And this yellow means maybe. He might still be around. So let's think about my options. I could take Derrick Henry right now and get a value of 85 from him, right? But then with my next pick, notice Matt Stafford is probably going to be gone because his box is green. So whatever quarterback I get after him, the value is going to decrease. So Stafford to Cousins is going to go down by 2, right? Which isn't a whole lot, but sometimes it can be a lot bigger drop off. So it's the thing is could we take Stafford right now, even though his value is lower, take Stafford right now, and maybe, because this box is yellow, maybe Derrick Henry will still be there when our next pick comes around 4 picks from now. All right, and if it is, then we can get both of those players and not lose any value. Okay, if I take Henry, I might lose 2 points in value if Stafford gets taken, or even more. Maybe Cousins gets taken also, and then I'm down here to Roethlisberger. So that's one way that you can gain value in the draft, is by finding those players that you might be able to wait on or know you can wait on if it's red, and waiting on those players to get them, and getting another player that may have a little bit less of value, but getting both of the players. Okay, it's a way to steal value from your opponents. Another way is to use the drop-off column. So drop-off, again, tells you how much of a drop-off there is from that player to the next expected player at that position that you would be able to get. So looking at Gronkowski right now as an example. So his value is 80, but look at his drop-off. It's 26. So let's say Derrick Henry wasn't an option right now. Maybe his value is like 75 instead of 85. My two highest are Stafford and Gronkowski. All right, well, the highest value says take Stafford. But because there's a big drop-off from Gronkowski, I want to take Gronkowski because there's not as much of a drop-off for Stafford. So here's the two situations that we might be in. If I take Stafford now, or let's say we take take Stafford now, then we get a value of 82 from him. And then the next time we take a tight end, we're going to probably lose 26 on our tight end position and get a tight end with a value of about 54. So we get an 82 quarterback and a 54 tight end. But if we take Gronkowski now, we're going to get an 80 tight end and only lose about 4 on the quarterback and get about a 78 quarterback, which is going to be overall total value higher than if we take Stafford right now and get another tight end later on. So that's another way that you can gain value on your opponents, is by looking at how much drop-off there's going to be and taking that into consideration whenever you have two guys that have a similar value. There's not a big difference in the value, but there's a significantly different drop-off amount. Okay, so that's the essential essence of doing the value-based drafting whenever it's a standard draft, not an auction draft. If you look over here at the draft results, you can see how the teams are populating for you and has the overall team values listed down here. Now, as you get to the end of the draft, you'll be able to see how your team compares to the opponents. Notice that my team is significantly less because most teams have drafted 2 players and I still only have 1. So, of course, my team value is going to be much less than the rest of the people in the draft. So I have a draft grade of F-. All right. So let's go ahead and look at whenever you do an auction draft, what the differences are on the draft board. So noticing the differences, if you have an auction draft, the value column is now a dollar value, which coincides with the budget that's in your league. Of course, you can set that budget up on the settings page. Then you also have a positional budget. So what we talked about in the first video, you can set a budget for how much money you want to spend at each position when you do an auction draft. Another setting to be aware of on here is when you do your draft results, do you want your draft results to show your team value like we did with the standard league a second ago, or with a snake draft a second ago, or do you want it to show what the team's draft budget is? So do you want to see what your opponent's current budget is during the draft? Alright, so I'll show you how those two work here in a second, but that's something to be aware of. So auction draft, the big differences are these 5 columns right here. You've got your value, you've got your position budget, and this is the average budget. So what that does is it takes the position budget that you enter in for that position, and it takes how many players you want at that position. So if I want 5 running backs and I want to spend $119, it divides that to figure out how much money you want to spend per running back on average. So that's where 24 comes from. 119 divided by 5 rounds off to 24. So as we go through the draft, you notice that this column is going to be the same. You're just going to put who drafts this player. But the column over here is now the draft price in dollars. So this is the value of Todd Gurley. This is how much is actually spent on Todd Gurley. So during the draft, let's say the first pick, Todd Gurley goes up for auction, and Stevens buys Todd Gurley, but he doesn't buy him for his value of $70. He buys him for $65. So you would put how much Stevens spent on Gurley right there. Now over here on the draft results, you'll see that it shows you the value of Todd Gurley, which we had in the $70. It shows you how much value he has. Okay, but if you go to the settings tab and you switch that from team value to draft budget, well, now it throws in $65, all right, which is how much Stevens spent on Todd Gurley, and down here it tells you the budget that Stevens has left, how much money Stevens has left during the draft, which can be important information to know if someone is, late in the draft, if they have enough money to buy a player. And it gives you an advantage whenever you're bidding, because if they only have $20 left, if I bid 21, then they're not going to be able to get that player. So using the budget tool can be very beneficial during the draft. Now let's say we have a second player draft. Now it's our turn. Well, it's not, you don't have turn. Sorry, maybe you actually draft this player. So let's say we draft Ezekiel Elliott again. Maybe this person went for 64, and I got Ezekiel Elliott for 62. Okay. So as you can see now, the position budgets decrease whenever I take a player. So I don't have as much money now. I'll have the 119 for a running back minus the 62 that I spent on Ezekiel Elliott. So I have $57 left to spend on running backs, but now I only need 4 more running backs. So 57 divided by 4 is going to round off to about 14. So it still tells me I have $14 on average left to spend on running backs, which is a good number to be aware of, because whenever I need to buy a running back, I can have an idea of am I over the average budget or under the average budget. So if I buy another running back, if I spend $20 on my second running back, I know that the average that I'll have left for the rest of my running backs is going to go down from 14. It's going to be less. All right, so you can see right here, let's say I bought another running back, and say I spent $20. Well, now that goes down below 14. But if I bought another running back and I only spent $5, now that goes up above 14, so it increases my average budget. All right, so that's how you can use this for auction drafts. Again, there's no colors or anything for an auction draft. It's not really a situation where you need colors to tell you whether it's worth it or not. You have to be able to use the budget to help you out during the draft. The sort value still will work if you want to sort the players, and everything else still works normally. And you can still check your draft results at the end. You just want to make sure that you change this from draft budget to team value, and you'll still be able to check and see how good of a draft you had and get a grade on your draft. All right, well, I appreciate you all checking out the Dynamic Fantasy Football Draft Board. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to email me right here at this email address, and good luck in your drafts this year.